What if the person you trusted most in the world, someone you thought was untouchable, was hiding a dark secret that could destroy everything? Meet Emma, the daughter of one of the wealthiest, most influential men in the world, Alexander Knight. His name is known everywhere, from billion-dollar business deals to lavish charity events. To the public, he's a hero, a self-made billionaire who changed the world with his empire. But what if everything you thought you knew about him was a lie? For years, Emma lived in her father's shadow, always seen, but never truly heard. A life of luxury, yes, but a life of secrets as well. Secrets so big, so shocking, that when Emma uncovered them, her world came crashing down. In today's video, we're about to reveal the explosive truth that Emma uncovered about her father's dark past. What happens next will leave you stunned. Will she expose it to the world, or will she protect the man who gave her everything despite everything he's done? Stick around till the end to find out how the story unfolds and how one secret could shatter an entire empire. Welcome to Craze TV, where we uncover the stories that no one else dares to tell. If you want to stay updated on the latest jaw-dropping revelations, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Alexander Knight wasn't just a name, he was a brand, the kind of man the world admired. A self-made billionaire who turned a small startup into an empire worth billions. He was a fixture in the media, always seen in the most exclusive circles, hosting lavish galas, donating millions to charity, and receiving awards for his so-called humanitarian work. To the outside world, Alexander was the epitome of success, someone you could look up to, someone you wanted to be. He built a legacy that seemed untouchable. The Knight family story was the kind of fairy tale everyone loved to tell. A visionary father who pulled himself from nothing. A beautiful home with a flawless family. There were no scandals, no whispers in the background, just perfection. Emma, his daughter, was a part of that image. She lived a life many could only dream of: private jets, designer clothes, trips to exotic destinations. But behind that glitz and glamour, there was a silence that followed her everywhere. Emma wasn't the star of the show. In fact, she was often seen as little more than a side note in her father's empire. She never sought the limelight, always content to stay in the background. It was clear that her father was the one everyone cared about, the one who deserved all the praise. Emma quietly observed, always smiling, always polite. But there was something in her eyes, a quiet awareness, a sense that something wasn't quite right in the perfect world they lived in. She had always known that things weren't as flawless as they seemed, but it wasn't until one particular day that she realized just how deep the cracks went. It started with an offhand comment from one of her father's old colleagues during a casual dinner. The man spoke about Alexander's past in a way that made Emma uneasy. It wasn't anything overt, but there was an underlying tone, as if he knew something Emma didn't. The words lingered in her mind long after the dinner ended. "It's just like your father, always hiding behind that perfect smile." Later that night, Emma overheard a conversation between her father and his lawyer. She couldn't make out everything, but she heard enough something about damage control and a file marked private. The air felt thicker the next morning when she found the same file lying half open on the desk in her father's office. As she picked it up, her heart raced. Was this the file that could change everything? And then there was a name, a date, and a set of figures that made her stomach drop. The evidence she never expected to find. Something about her father's financial dealings. Something that didn't add up. This wasn't just a small mistake. It was the kind of thing that, if anyone else discovered it, would end his empire. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust. The very trust that had made him who he was. Emma's perfect world suddenly felt like it was built on a foundation of sand. But even then, she hesitated. Was it possible her father was hiding something like this all along? Or was she misunderstanding everything? Maybe it was just a mistake, something that could be explained. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The tension had already started to build, and the truth was finally clawing its way to the surface. Emma's mind raced as she stared at the file. The words seemed to blur in front of her eyes, but the cold, undeniable truth was slowly sinking in. Every piece of her life, every moment she had spent in the shadows of her father's empire, now felt like a lie. She couldn't stop herself from reading further, even though a voice inside her screamed to put it down, to walk away and pretend she never saw it. But she couldn't. Her hands trembled, and a pit formed in her stomach. Each line she read made the ground beneath her feel less stable. What was her father hiding? How could someone who had built a fortune on trust, on the image of the perfect, upstanding businessman, have something like this in his past? The more Emma uncovered, the more she felt betrayed, as though the man she thought she knew, the father who raised her, who promised to protect her, was nothing like the person she had believed in. She felt a whirlwind of emotions. Shock was the first. She couldn't believe what she was reading. This didn't feel real. Her father had always been the picture of integrity. Everyone admired him, his public speeches, his charities, his unshakable sense of honor. But here she was, uncovering a completely different side of him, a side he had carefully kept hidden. Then came confusion. Could she really trust what she was seeing? Was it possible this was some kind of mistake? But as she flipped through the pages, the story began to piece itself together, each document, each hidden detail, pointing to something even darker. It felt like a storm was brewing inside her, a mixture of disbelief and rage, with nowhere to turn. She wanted answers, but she feared what those answers might cost her. And then, like a punch to the gut, came the realization. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't just some small error. The files weren't just about illegal financial activities or a questionable business deal. No, this was far worse. Her father wasn't just hiding financial discrepancies. He had been involved in something far more sinister. Something that went back years. Something tied to a series of shady dealings with criminal organizations. The documents laid out connections to money laundering, black market deals, and even bribery. Names she didn't recognize, but which were linked to the very empire her father had built. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the personal betrayal. One of the files contained a list of people her father had hurt, people she knew, people who had trusted him. Her own mother's name was mentioned in a context Emma couldn't quite understand, but it was enough to make her stomach churn. Was her father involved in something that even touched her family directly? Had he been lying to her mother for years, hiding a double life? This secret was more than just a scandal. It was a complete destruction of everything they had worked for, everything the world had admired about him. If anyone found out about these dealings, the truth would send shockwaves through the public, tearing down the empire he had built. The legacy he so carefully crafted would be shattered in an instant. No one would look at him the same way again. The golden reputation he had spent decades constructing would turn to dust. Emma felt her heart race. She didn't know what to do with this truth. She loved her father, but could she still protect him? Or was this a betrayal so deep that exposing it was the only way to make it right? The more she thought about it, the more she realized there was no going back. Once the world knew, everything would change, and Emma wasn't sure if she was ready for what would happen next. Emma's thoughts consumed her as she stood in front of her father, the man who had always been larger than life, the one whose shadow had loomed over her for as long as she could remember. This wasn't just another conversation, it was the moment of truth. She could feel the weight of the file in her hands, the truth she had uncovered about the dark side of the man she once admired. The walls around her seemed to close in as her father looked at her, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Should she confront him? She had thought about it 1,000 times, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of that moment. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. What would she even say? How could she look him in the eye after everything she had learned? Her heart pounded, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaking as she laid the documents out in front of him. I know what you've been hiding. Her words were quiet but firm, a raw honesty she had never before dared to share. For the first time in years, Emma saw her father's expression falter. The facade, the perfect man who had always controlled every situation, seemed to crack. But he didn't deny it. Instead, he pleaded. He tried to explain, but his words fell flat against the truth Emma had uncovered. He apologized, but it was too late. The betrayal, the decades of lies, it all hit Emma like a wave, and she struggled to reconcile the father she had known with the man standing before her now. It was as if the truth of his actions had stripped him of the person she thought she had loved. In that moment, the idea of protecting him, of shielding the family legacy, felt impossible. She could walk away, bury the truth, and live in silence. But something inside her snapped. The world deserved to know. If she stayed silent, it wouldn't just be a betrayal of her own morals, it would be a betrayal of everything he had claimed to stand for. So she made a choice. She would expose him. The world would know the man behind the public persona, the real story of Alexander Knight. But the consequences came swiftly. The news broke almost overnight. Headlines screamed of the billionaire businessman involved in criminal activities, a world-renowned philanthropist now linked to money laundering, bribery, and dark dealings that threatened to destroy his empire. The world was stunned, and Emma's decision rocked the public to its core. Social media exploded with people divided. Some supported Emma for exposing the truth, while others called her a traitor, accusing her of destroying a legacy that had helped so many. Her phone rang constantly, news outlets flooding her with requests for interviews, trying to understand why she would betray her own father. Her father's empire crumbled before their eyes. His companies saw their stocks plummet, his supporters began to vanish, and even his charity work was called into question. The pristine image of the Knight family, carefully constructed over decades, was now shattered. There were lawsuits, investigations, and whispers about the depth of his involvement in criminal networks. The public was unforgiving, and soon Alexander was removed from the boards of nearly every organization he was associated with. His wealth, once untouchable, was now at risk. As for Emma, the consequences were more personal, more complicated. The fallout from her decision was unlike anything she could have imagined. While some hailed her as a hero, a symbol of truth and justice, others saw her as the destroyer of a legacy that had been built for generations. Her friends distanced themselves, unsure of how to stand by someone who had torn down a titan. Her family, what was left of it, became fractured. The pain of seeing her father's life fall apart was almost unbearable. She had hoped for peace, for clarity, but instead, she found herself drowning in questions. Was she wrong? Should she have kept the secret buried? The guilt gnawed at her, but so did the sense of liberation. She had done what she believed was right, but it hadn't come without sacrifice. Her personal life was no longer hers to control. She couldn't step outside without facing the media, the judgment of others. Her life had become an open book. Every decision, every move was scrutinized. Yet, despite the isolation, Emma couldn't ignore the small, quiet part of her that felt a strange sense of relief. She had chosen truth over loyalty, and in doing so, she had become someone new. A person unafraid to stand up to the darkness, no matter how close it was. Just when Emma thought the worst was over, an unexpected twist turned everything upside down. In the days following the public revelation, the authorities uncovered something even darker, something no one had anticipated. It wasn't just the money laundering or the illegal deals that would destroy her father's reputation. It was the discovery of a hidden relationship tied to her father's past, one that involved a betrayal so deep it left Emma questioning everything. The truth that was exposed didn't just end his empire. It unraveled a web of lies that went back decades, and suddenly her father's secrets seemed far darker than she could ever have imagined. In the end, what price does one truly pay for exposing the truth? Is there ever a point where silence is the better choice? What do you think? Did Emma do the right thing, or was there another path she should have taken? We want to hear your thoughts. Comment below and let us know what you would have done in her shoes. If you found this story shocking, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more jaw-dropping revelations. And hit that bell icon so you never miss the latest updates on the stories that make us question everything we know. This story is purely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real persons living or dead is purely coincidental. The events and characters in this video are entirely imagined, and the narrative is meant to engage and entertain, not to reflect real-life occurrences. Thank you for watching.